life is a big preparation for death, right? Because it's like you let go of your youth, you let go of material things, you let go of your dreams, you let go of disappointment, and then finally you let go of your parents, and then finally you let go of you.
Here we are, Dave Ferruggio again, another episode of Dead Talks. I really need to work on my introduction, but I have a new friend here who was recently introduced to me. It's only been a few days now, actually, with a mutual friend who he thought would be good for the podcast. He is an agent. He's a producer, a comedian, which I learned in person moments ago with some of his jokes. We'll see if he pulls them on air. He also has his own podcast he's doing for a couple of years called Outliers TV. His name is Jorge Perez. George, how are you, man?
What's up?
So I just had to say George. We already spoke about that.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's a thing. Okay.
Tell you more about the Jorge jokes.
Okay. No more
As we get to know each other better.
No more Jorge jokes, but even though I thought I said that really well. Anyway, George, thank you so much for being here again. And I'm not going to spill the beans on your story. I'd rather you say it how you want to say it. And you can start wherever you want to start, and we'll just roll from there.
Yeah. Do you want to hear a little Jorge joke?
You got a Jorge?
Yeah, I got the Jorge
start us
joke.
off with a Jorge
So,
joke.
I basically on this, I always start my comedy set. One of the things I started with is saying how all the Jorges become George when they move to the U.S. And we don't want to admit it, but it's because the word whore is part of our name. And it didn't happen to Juan's, it didn't happen to Jose's, but it happened. And finally I say, I don't get any respect for my name, not even from Siri.
Okay.
All right. So the other day an Uber took me home, and when we got to my house, Siri announced, "You've arrived at Jorge's house." And I'm like, seriously, Siri? You don't know me, bitch. You don't know my life. That was in the past.
Jorge is a new one.
Jorge.
Yeah.
And he started laughing too. He was like,
Wait, the Uber driver? Or
yeah,
Siri?
the Uber driver.
Yeah, okay.
No, not Siri. That's Terminator shit.
Yeah.
If Siri would have been laughing at what she said. So what do you want to know? What do you want to know? What do you want to know? I love the picture of your old man.
Yeah. That's
Very
it.
sweet.
You told me I look like him, apparently.
You look like
I mean, he looks damn good in that photo, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a heavy compliment, but
Yeah.
it looks good.
Yeah.
Yes, I kind of got my dad looking down at me. If anyone out looking on YouTube, right behind me on the wall, one of my favorite photos of my dad. So
Yeah.
that's why I started this. But what brings you here today? I know you have a story to share.
Yeah. Well, I love the name of your podcast, Dead Talks.
Dead Talks.
Dead Talks.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, obviously, as I was telling you a little before, my dad passed away last year. He was diagnosed with leukemia back in August of the year before. So I think it was July, August, and then he passed away on Easter of last year. And that's a train, right? When you embark, I know obviously, death is death, right? And we had our parents had a different departure. Yours was so sudden, and my dad's was, kind of watching the whole movie unravel, and
right.
it was a beautiful, very painful journey, but it was powerful. And I had the privilege of being his stem cell donor, so
wow.
We were a match genetically. And that was a whole nother joke because I had to take an STD test, and I was like, well, I was like, Dad, for a gay man, an STD test is like Vegas.
Yeah.
Either you go big and you're fine, or you go home.
Yeah.
So when the nurse sat down with my results, she's like, "You're all clear, and STDs, you're all fine." I was like, "Really?" She's like, yeah, and I was like, Nothing with an H? She was like, "No," and I was like, "Well, no shit." And then it was funny because then I went to see my dad the next day, and I randomly, man, I don't know how. I happened to be getting these weird Elton John bags, like goodie bags, sent to my address by mistake. And it was like an Elton John like tour gift bag that I just happened to have in my house. So I'm like, all right, I'll give it to my dad. And when I gave him the bag, I was like, listen, Dad, since you are going to have my DNA, I figured that this is a good starter kit, an Elton John goodie bag. And I was like, there was like a pen, a shampoo, a toothbrush. And at the end, I was like, Dad, and after you get my stem cells, I want you to know if there's anything you want to tell me, you can tell me.
You can talk to me.
I love you. You're my dad, and I accept you no matter what.
He recovers and he comes out a little gay.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah, anything. You're my dad. I love you no matter what. So
that's great.
We my dad and I stopped living with my dad when I was 12 because I moved to the U.S. and he stayed in Venezuela. Long story short, they were supposed to come the following year, and 20 years later, he finally came. So I didn't live with him anymore, but we were tight. I always felt like he had my back. I never felt like I felt like he gave it the best he could, and obviously, I'm sure you felt the same way when our parents leave. You think all the coulda, shoulda, woulda, and then you finally hit that moment where you're like, you know what, everything happened the way it was supposed to, and you kind of put away any kind of regrets.
So. Before the couple of the jokes you just mentioned, you mentioned how it was a beautiful and painful ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the beautiful isn't a part of what you just told me now. Is that what you meant? Like, how was it? Was it beautiful afterwards, or were you recognizing certain things during the ride? Because obviously the painful part is probably obvious to most people listening, but to see the beauty in a process like that, how do you mean?
Well, I think the beauty was just getting closer with him and having... certainly it's not beautiful to see somebody's body literally decaying, right? And just a poor guy had to go through so much chemo. I think you're right. I think that the beauty comes afterwards. But we did have, especially, right the day before, I was telling my friend this story today. Funny. I was just telling David, I was just, in Malibu where I scattered my dad's ashes today, and it's by this beach that I always go to, so that's why I did it there. I'm like, I'm always here, so might as well do it here.
It just happens to be next to the rosé.
Yeah. So and I was my dad's stem cell donor. So the day before the transfusion, I was having this kind of moment where I thought, the mind is so great at kind of taking us down in a way. So I was like, does he really accept me? Is like, I'm going to give him like my DNA, does he really know who I am? And does he love me? And we did have this powerful moment where he was like, he was such a Latino that he made a homophobic comment, but he didn't mean it. Okay. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. But we did have this moment where I was like, Dad, I'm gay. Why you got to say shit like that, Dad? And he was like, I love you. And I didn't mean it. And I'm so proud of you. And then I asked him, I'm like, Dad, why do you want to live?
Oh, wow. That's a powerful question.
And he paused and he said, I don't know. And then he said, I want to travel more. And then I said, okay. And then he said, I want to make fun of more people. and then that's when I started laughing. I was like, all right, well, sign me up for that. And it's funny, then a nurse walked in and the moment got lighter, and that's all we needed. We just needed to have like an authentic moment where I wasn't putting my expectations on how my dad should be and what acceptance from a father looks like. Just a real moment was all that I needed.
And it's wild to think that it took this to kind of bring that moment, or did you have moments like this prior?
I think there were always like little moments where I always, felt whether it was his acceptance or love, but I think that moment was the last real true moment before obviously the transplant, and then before his passing, because then I had to come back to LA, and then it just, things turned, took a dive. So right. He was in Miami. So that whole year I was going back and forth. But it was, I don't know about you, but my relationship with my father really started after he died. Where I after, yeah, and not because he wasn't present before, because he was, but now it's like he's everywhere, and I feel his presence. And I always tell people this. I always say, I think that life is a big preparation for death, right? Because it's like everything, you let go of your youth, you let go of material things, you let go of your dreams, you let go of disappointment, and then finally you let go of your parents, and then finally you let go of you. right? So everything is just preparing you for the ultimate letting go. So letting go of our parents is like the one before, right? And I tell people that I know it feels so scary, but you don't want to miss out on the other part, because there's something so sweet and beautiful about saying goodbye, and you can't say goodbye if you don't leave. And when you say goodbye, it's almost like you acknowledge someone for everything they were, everything they were not, everything that worked, everything that didn't work, and you say goodbye. And it's beautiful, because that's when you can miss someone if they don't leave.
Yeah.
And missing is a beautiful emotion, especially a parent missing is, and I'm not like masochistic, but it's a beautiful pain, right?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think it's hard for people to realize that unless you've experienced it, because I think it comes off maybe a little bit masochistic if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I couldn't agree more. And I think I've always said there's a beauty in tragedy, and it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's really not. I think that's when you make a lot of realizations. And like you said, your relationship started after he died. And I think, that's actually a unique thing I've heard, which makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of beauty in it, but that depends how you take it. So it's interesting when I hear someone like you take it like that. And I always wonder why some people go the other direction and don't see the light in something that can be beautiful. It's contradictory.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you in regards to what you're saying, did it make it better or worse, or did it make it easier or harder having that amazing like kind of finale moment with your father prior to dying? Like, was it closure, or did it kind of, like, how did you see that? Was it just strictly closure, or did it make it even harder because like I had this amazing moment and now he's gone? Does that make sense?
I think it made it way better, because I felt that we had a really beautiful moment before his death, which we hadn't had one in a while, nor was I expecting to have any kind of a moment. I mean, the poor guy was like wrestling with keeping himself alive, right? But the actual last moment that I remember having with him was actually really monumental as well, because he couldn't breathe, so he had to be intubated, and it was like that moment where the nurse, I guess like the hospital practitioner comes and he has to sign off on being intubated, and here he is gasping for air, and they're like, "Do you agree to be intubated, and do you waive?" And he's like, he's just trying to get his answers in, and it was him on the bed, and my sister, me, and my stepmom all around him. And we're basically saying goodbye before he gets intubated. And it was so weird, because I flew to Miami the night before, because my sister called me 2 days before. She's like, "You need to come home. Like, you need to come home now." And it was right before Coachella weekend 1. So I had to modify my plans, which was great time.
And Easter, right?
It was like great time. Yeah. It was. No. So it was right. It was the week before Easter that he was intubated, but he actually died on Easter.
Got it.
So,
okay.
so I came back.
Different moment. Okay.
I came back. So,
sheesh.
So I, so we had that moment. So I flew to Miami, Coachella weekend 1, and I got there that night, and the next day I was getting ready to go to the gym. I'm in Miami. I'm like, I'm going to show up to the hospital at a cool 11:30. And then my stepmom called, and she's like, "No, you need to come to the hospital now. Like, he's not doing well." So my sister and I rushed to the hospital, and we literally caught him. Like, man, had I gotten there 5 minutes later, I would have missed out on the last time I saw my dad conscious. You know what I mean? Yeah. After that, he was intubated for the next week or so. But man, it's made me think so much about my life. And I invite people to take this on. Like, no matter how much someone has like a family, right? A wife or a husband and kids and grandkids and all that, or no matter how lonely you are, that you don't have those things that our society creates as the pinnacle of a successful family life or whatever, man, you're going to take that journey by yourself. And when my dad was sitting there not being able to breathe right before they intubated him, and my stepmom and me and my sister were all around him, and he had to wave us goodbye, I don't know, man. I just got this crazy like realization of like, oh man, the hero's journey is all on your own.
You just saw that? You just saw the fact that he was saying leaving by himself?
Yeah, like it's just like, it doesn't matter how much love you have on the outside. I mean, listen, we need people, and I mean, God bless that he had such a beautiful support system and love around him. But when we face the music, it's you're inside this bag of bones, and it's all you. You know,
That's scary. What did that make you feel?
It just it gave me perspective on the idea that we have of being lonely. In a way, it made me think like we're all lonely, whether you're surrounded by a million people. This is a journey that you take by yourself. Yeah. So it's weird. It's twofold, right? There's a part that's like, oh shit, that sucks. But there's another part that says, no matter where you are in the spectrum of family, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because you're gonna take this ride by yourself. I mean, it's like you're going into like you're in Six Flags and you're going into like the double like.
I was literally thinking Six Flags.
Yeah,
it's funny you said that because I was like, my first thought was Six Flags. I was like, no, maybe it's getting in an airplane. So I was having an inner monologue of like, wait, what is this like?
No, I think it's like what's like the really hardcore in Six Flags, the double X,
X2.
X2.
Yeah,
like you're riding that shit alone.
Yeah.
And you can be with your best friend, but it's like, no, you're gonna ride that X2 by yourself, and you're gonna lose your cell phone for sure.
You're not even bringing your cell phone. Yeah, that thing's gone. But I mean, it's interesting because you're kind of sandwiched. I wonder if they're saying goodbye. Your face family was around him, so like he's not alone there. But whatever that next phase is, maybe it's a quick little ride alone, and then maybe you see some other people.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I've had two really huge things that happen. I don't know if you dreamt with your dad. Did you dream with your dad afterwards? Did you have dreams with him?
Yeah, I've had a few that stand out.
Yeah.
One really stands out. But another episode I was mentioning how, I think the episode I just recorded yesterday was talking how I yearn to dream so much about him, and it happens when I don't force it, but I try. Yeah. I actually do try.
Yeah.
I'm taking you've had dreams?
Yeah, I had one huge vivid one, which was it was on the plane ride back from the funeral, which in my dream, I was a little kid, and you know, dreams are like all over the place. And I remember that he was in my classroom and I couldn't see his body, but I could see a light. It was just a light. And I recognized him. So I was like, Papi, what do you need? What do you need? Are you okay? Are you okay? Okay. And then. Are
you talking in Spanish in the dream?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Spanish it was mixed.
Just curious.
Yeah, it was mixed actually. And then he would speak to me in Spanish, and most of the time I would talk to him back in English. And so in this dream, I'm just kind of getting all kind of hectic, trying to figure out if he's okay. And he just, I could hear his voice, and I've never heard his voice so calm. And the voice said, Jorgito. That's what he used to call me. He goes, Jorgito. And I'm like, ¿Qué? He's like, Jorgito. He goes, Estoy bien, papito. And I'm like, really? ¿De verdad? He's like, Estoy bien.
Oh, no way. It's so peaceful.
Bien, so he's like, I'm fine. And it was him. And it was him without the weight of the body. It was him without any kind of consideration that he had. It was just like the cleanest version of him, you know? And so that was one pretty surreal one. And then a year ago, I did toad medicine, which is kind of like
DMT.
Yeah, DMT. Yeah. Well, it's not straight up DMT, but it's like a 30-minute ride that makes you release DMT.
Sound like a little toad with a spoon handing you something, right?
No, it's not. Okay. But it felt that way. And when I did it, I relived. I was back in that hospital room, but I felt like I was experiencing what he experienced.
Oh shit!
Which was so frightening, and it was just so. I feel what I describe it as. It's almost like the ego realizing that it's about to die, and it's freaking the fuck out. It's like
painful or just horrifying?
It's fear, like horrifying. Like I'm gonna die. And then once we passed that point of death, it was nothing but love. It was all love. And I went from like sobbing to like it was love. So I get, and hopefully, I mean, this is my greatest wish for everyone and myself. It's to have that kind of knowing before that moment of death comes, because I think the egos, it's weird. This is how I can describe it. It's almost like, we're so danger wired, right? We're so wired to like evade danger, like danger, burst, suffer, whatever, instincts. Because your instincts are all about survival, but yet your soul knows that there's nothing wrong with death.
Yeah.
So it's weird. So your senses are like, this is not a good idea. This is not. But then when you transition, it's all love, and then you're like, oh my God,
been worrying this whole time.
Yeah,
that is an interesting way to put it. Because by nature we are, survival instincts. All we want to do is survive.
We're wired for survival.
We're wired for survival, and that almost has a contradictory effect. What you're saying, and obviously the soul's purpose, perhaps, of being okay with dying. Yeah. But this whole life of fearing of dying, we have to survive. Almost makes you think we're innately supposed to think death is a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's not. Obviously, we want to live, but it's interesting to hear those stories and your experience. Because does that mean you're at peace with death right now, as much as you can be? Like, what is your perceptive? I can't even speak. Perception.
You know what I am? I mean, here's the thing, right? Whether you're religious or spiritual or whatnot, it's funny. I did a ketamine therapy like 2 weeks ago. Have you ever heard of that? Ketamine therapy?
I've heard about it.
You've heard of Special K.
Yes, but I've heard more medicinal reasons for
ketamine. Yeah. So the therapy, you do it with a doctor, and you have to it's an hour, and they do a time release through your veins and the whole thing. But I can see why it's very successful for people that are suicidal, because you immediately realize that you're more than just this body. You have this surreal life, like spiritual experience. And I think that that's what, if we had an unwavering faith about there's more to life than just these, 70, 80, 90 years that we have here, then we could, the more that we could be okay with death, the more that we would be okay with living.
I couldn't have said that any better. Yeah. And it's so true. And I think that's the point of, in my head, not that my head says anything right, but the idea of getting comfortable with death is like, once you can get comfortable with death, that's when you can truly start to live, as you said. And I truly believe in that, because if we're constantly living in fear in general, whatever it is, whether it's death or something else, it's a little harder to live. But it's interesting when you said how that would potentially help suicidal patients.
And I think, my theory about it is because suicidal patients are the ego has hijacked the whole machine, which you're basically like, you can't see past like how you fucked up your life, or you don't have the career you want, or you don't have the spouse you want, or you have the spouse you hate, or whatever. And you have no bandwidth to consider that you're just passing by and that you're going to move on to something else. So that, to me, I mean, and I could only speak for myself, right? But thinking that there's more to life past the coronavirus or whatever gives me peace. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, so you're saying whatever the next phase, there is another phase. And
right.
And being there another phase, is that phase, like, in your opinion, absolutely bliss? Or is it like, you said love, do you believe there's the ebbs and flows of life, good, evil, ups and downs of everything? Did you, in your opinion, do you witness, or do you believe that the next step is like more consistent love?
I think the next step is, that next phase is actually you're in pure love.
Right.
I do see, but who knows, right? I mean, is it like school? Is it like you're in summer school? Is it like you're home for the holidays, but then
something else
comes fall, you have to come back to school?
Oh, God,
maybe. But it wouldn't surprise me, right? You know what's so crazy? So I've had, in the past 2 years, right before COVID, I've had 20 people that have died on me.
20 people?
20 people. 2018, 2019.
20 people?
My landlord committed suicide. My accountant committed suicide. My friend Matt died of a heart attack at 42. My friend Carol died of a brain aneurysm at 52. My friend Alex died of cirrhosis of the liver at 43. My friend Silvio committed suicide. Anyway, the list goes on. No, I'm like the black angel of death.
You're collecting deaths right now. Jesus.
But you know what? So, and I was talking to this psychic friend of mine, and apparently it's almost like essential workers. I guess, like, consciousness or whatever has needed all these people to come in order to help and assist all the people that were going to come in through COVID.
Wait, who are the people that are helping you?
Like apparently, according to the psychic, right?
Okay, right.
The people that have died in the last 2 years on me were like angels that were kind of summoned up to be ready for this.
They're like customs, like TSA?
No, like essential workers.
Yeah.
Like they needed nurses, which is interesting. I mean, listen, again, this is all.
No, I don't know. Maybe. What the fuck do I know?
Yeah. But I just, in my experience, it's been so wild that 20 people.
That's a lot of. Some people don't even experience that in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And
from all ages. It wasn't like old age or some crazy cancer. So,
what does that do to you?
You know what? It actually, sometimes it hurt a lot, but it also, it revigorated me and made me realize like, dude, I'm here for a minute. Like, what am I sweating that I need to just let go of? What am I not working on that I need to work on? What am I, today I was in Malibu with a friend of mine and I'm like, when else would we be on a Tuesday just celebrating life? And I'm here in the place where my dad's ashes are. So, and I sympathize. We're all having our different experiences about the current situation. But man, if this is not the biggest, loudest speaking sign of like, you got to seize the day, then I don't know what is. No matter what that is for you.
Yeah, the challenge is, I guess, maintaining that. Because you ever have just those moments, like you just said, but it's a moment of realization or inspiration. But then, like, how many times have you personally, for me, I'm talking about myself, where it's like, I feel those moments, let's do it. And then it ebbs and flows again, where it's like, you don't have that motivation. So how do you maintain that? Do you have to lose 20 people to maintain that motivation to live every day like that?
Well, the first thing that I would say is, why do you have to maintain it? Why? I think as a society, and we all do this, right? It's like, why there's happiness and peace of mind is so over glamorized. Like, we're a human being filled with all these different emotions, right? Like whether it's rage or jealousy, or how about every single emotion having their own real estate in your gamut of emotions. Yeah. Instead of like trying to like, oh, everything is fine, I'm happy, but just kind of. And I get what you're saying. I think the same way, 100%. And I'm the same way, right? Like how I'd rather feel a state of ecstasy and gratitude and joy, and not really entertain feelings of grief as much as I can, right?
Yeah. So I was making sure you're still on the camera, right? You're bigger than me, so you know to make sure.
Hey,
but I 100% agree with that. I can't say. I'm never going to say everyone, but there is a sense of, and that's not what I meant, that we have to like always put this, like always have to be happy. That's not life. Like I think you need those ups and downs as part of. That's how you said it earlier in your own way of how like that's how you realize. How do you know happiness without pain? How do you know happiness without sadness? So I'm very clear on that. I think it's just. I guess what I was trying to say is, how do we make people realize that? Because you've had a unique experience of losing your father, losing 20 people, so you've had lessons to be learned. And then some people that haven't lost as many people as you have, maybe don't make that realization. It's like how does someone like that make that realization without experiencing death firsthand?
Yeah, my answer is I don't know. But it's interesting that I can tell you that it's a very unique pain, right? To lose a parent or to lose close people to you, but it builds you, and you can hear it in someone's voice, right? I'll never forget when I had a friend of mine, and she was somebody that, her mom like left when she was young, and she had to raise her own sister, and she had to really kind of grow up fast. And I remember I heard her speak once, and she sat next to me, and this is before I knew her, and I said, you know what, you can hear the maturity and the pain in your voice, and it sounds so beautiful. I think losing a parent just creates this kind of like love and growth that people that haven't that haven't had that experience don't have. Don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I noticed that with other people. I can't really, I like to think I notice that with myself for a certain perspective I have in life, but I can only see it in other people for the most part. But that's definitely,
we're all part of a club.
Yeah, it is. Like that was not the Mile High Club. It's like the Mile Low Club. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's some kind of club. But no, I get it. It makes sense that
the Grown Up Club.
Is that what it is? Grown Up Club?
Yeah, I think you're definitely a grown up when that happens.
I mean, how much real does it get when death is death? Like, there's what else is like? I mean, that's it. Death. Yeah. So if you experience it in a very intimate way, it has to. It changes. It has to change you. Like once you experience like that and realize the finality of it, it's one of those things where you don't think it's going to happen to you. It's like all the crazy shit that happens in the world that seems so distant on the news. It's harder to relate to it when it's not in your circle. And once you experience something that's that close to you, that's when you really feel it. Yeah. And it's a mark that stays with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. And it's just a matter of how you take it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so what propelled you to start this podcast?
Good question. No, without boring everyone to death, it obviously extends from my own experience losing my dad and growing up from the eyes of my mother, always explaining to me how she wished I would just express more. And I guess I didn't. A lot of those things I forget growing up. I lost my dad when I was 12, so I'm a little hazy about how I grieved with it as a kid, becoming a man today. And at some point, I don't know when it was, all I know is how I am now, but I became comfortable just being vocal about it. And from what I remember, I wasn't. And my connecting the dots was, talking about it, letting it out is okay. And I think it's made me feel better. It's made me realize a lot of things, just talking things out. You learn things as you just say it out loud. And I just realized the importance of talking about it. My mother was right in that aspect. And also conjoined with that was my dad died on a public stage on September 11th, which made me kind of feel, I don't want to say frustrated, but I had a different perspective that why am I getting all the attention every anniversary? Why am I getting those texts every year, which I'm grateful for? And the clear answer is everyone remembers 9/11. Not everyone remembers Joe down the street that lost his dad to a heart attack on a Wednesday on June 17th. You know what I mean? So it's partially the combination of realizing the importance of talking and also shedding the light on other people that may not get the same recognition that I have. And just that's two answers. I can go on and on, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to make this conversation easier. And hearing someone like you that might not, I'm sure you get texts from people that like in your circle, but for the most part, I get texts every anniversary, which I'm grateful for. I love it. It's amazing. The love I get is truly amazing. But if my dad didn't die on 9/11, I'm not getting all that. Yeah. Not because of my dad, but just like, who the hell is forgetting December 25th is Christmas, 9/11 is 9/11. So it's like, but just partially of thinking of my other friends that I've lost, my other friends that have lost people and, they died on a normal day. So I think it's important to discuss other people's stories. Yeah. I don't know. It's like, it's the most relatable thing we all deal with. Like, what else is more common? I'm asking you, what do you think is more common than death? Like, I always say breathing, but not every motherfucker can breathe.
Taxes.
Not everyone does taxes. You can avoid taxes. You know what I mean? So it's like,
not everyone pays taxes.
You know what I mean? So like, they say death and taxes, but like, there's ways around taxes too. Not me. I pay my taxes. But I'm just for argument's sake. So, it's cool to hear your perspective. Like you've already said a few things that stood out. More in particular, just the idea of, the double-sidedness of we want to survive and then, but then the way it paints death. It's so interesting hearing that. I might have never thought of that if I didn't hear you. And that's what I'm hoping people want to listen to this shit, listen to you. You present it in such a way that I think we align with the humor. I'm not a comedian like you are, but I like I think that's just a way of just deflating it and not in a disrespectful way. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I think that I actually did, I did a podcast about it in which I just talked about my dad's passing and I really feel strongly about, I know it's like the unthinkable, right? And I don't wish it upon anybody, any of my friends. I'm like, dude, I hope your parents live till they're 180 and they just become like, put them in the Museum of Natural History as like phenomenons. But I'm telling you, you don't, and I mean this, you don't want to miss out on that part either because it's beautiful. And I'm telling you, I feel my dad everywhere. Like I light a candle for him and I'm working right now. It's funny. I'm writing a book. I'm writing what's a manuscript right now.
Your manuscript.
And I'm not calling it a memoir. I'm calling it a recollection.
Okay.
And I want to be deep, so I'm thinking of calling it a deep recollection.
Okay.
But that'll be the second title. The first title, I don't want to talk about it because it's too good. Someone's going to steal it. But it's a combination of stories that I've done in stand-up that were really painful at some point, and then I turned them into jokes.
I love that.
And it's given me an opportunity to go back to and almost like rewrite my past and rewrite it in a way that makes me laugh. Like, my sister was this prodigy concert pianist, and I had no talent whatsoever, which did wonders for my self-esteem. So I can't begin to tell you like what a gift it is to have a prodigy sibling. Takes you to therapy your whole life.
Okay.
And my parents' friends were always like, so what instrument do you play? And I would be like, just with my skin flute.
I was wanted to drop that bomb. I'm so happy you said that.
And sometimes, and that would shut them up.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I would open them up, depending on the friend. And these were the 80s in
got any
Venezuela.
extra stem cells for me? Yeah. Okay.
So where back in the day that was a very painful thing to talk about, or a source of jealousy or whatever. Now I can laugh about it, and I used to tell my mom, I'm going to be a big star one day too, Mom, you'll see. And she would just laugh and she would go, ay, mijo, you should do stand up. And I'm like, well, here I am, Mom. Look at me now.
I love it.
So, it's good. I don't know. I feel like my stories were getting a little dark. I was going through memory lane, and they were getting kind of, like I was actually like, second guessing this book idea, because I was like, dude, I'm reliving things that I already put to bed. But then I asked my dad for guidance, and I had that epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to turn this into comedy skits and part of a set. And now it's like, now I'm loving it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally rewrote your memories. You rewrote it in a comedic way. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, that's why part of these conversations are just good, because I told you and I texted you right before I checked that I have this work call I got to take. I have to lay some horrible news. Not horrible news. Horrible is a very strong word. It's not as bad as death. Just work related, just crap I have to deal with. And then like when I have these conversations, like in the middle of it, I'm trying to keep my brain focused on you. That I'm thinking, like, who cares? Like in regards to what I have to do after this, my real estate business, like, I'm really thinking about it. It's going to be like the biggest deal, quote unquote, but we're talking about this, and it's like, it's nice to like, it deflates that. Like we're deflating death in a sense that it's easier to talk about and making it a little nicer and funnier, however we're doing it. But deflating death deflates the nonsense and the stimulus and the noise around us in life too, in my opinion. Like when you really think about death and what it is and being okay with that, why is everything else, like how is anything else going to be a big deal? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the things we quote unquote make a big deal that are stressful in our everyday life, that are routine, and just the noise of our life. It's when we can come to peace with death and the finality of life, it's like there's all this other stuff really is as important as we're making it up to be.
Yeah.
It does everything. It dumbs down the bullshit. It raises up what's important, your family and love. So that's why I think death is in the center of it all, and then life is around it. And so I just think, I don't want to wake people up and say, let's talk about death this morning, but like, be conscious of it.
Well, I think even, what we're going through right now, right, with this COVID-19, we're going through a death. We're going through the death of the American dream. We really are. I mean, I grew up in a third world country, and listen, when I was 10, the country would go on riots, and it was martial law. You couldn't leave your house. We had quarantine, not leave past 5. I finally moved to the US when I was 12, and Disneyland, the U.S. is Disneyland and Toys R Us and air conditioned everywhere, and people stop at stop signs. And I remember being little, like telling my grandmother, like, Grandma, why do these gringos stop at stop signs when no one can catch them? And she'll be like, ay, they're so weird. Like I remember, like,
that's crazy.
So now, I mean, not that the U.S. is a third world country yet, but we experience shortage of toilet paper, or we experience quarantine. You got to be home by 10, and things that we had never experienced. I mean, that's not necessarily true if you're on the older gen, but I say in my generation, maybe your generation, we've never encountered anything like this, and it's a death. It's a death of what we thought life was going to be about. You know, we thought life was going to be about the house in the hills and having 3 kids, and not that they're not anymore, but not the way that we had dreamed them. I think the American dream is different, and it's a good thing because it's happening. No one even knows the outcome of how this whole thing is going to be, or the kind of PTSD that we're all going to have, right? No one has that. We haven't even hit the climax of and this shit might turn into Mad Max. I mean, I don't know.
Just watched that the other day. So that's very vivid. If that happens to Mad Max, I'm fucked.
Or whatever. But I do think that as far as like a reset, and as far as like, you know, I remember when my dad was about to die, and he told his best friend, I'm not going to work anymore. And then his friend, who was his age, was like, wow, it took him this to realize I'm going to stop working. And now, in a way, we're all in a mandatory retirement, in a way. Because even I know you're working and I'm working, but obviously you've had time off.
It's different.
It's different. It's a whole different way of relating to work.
And I love how you kind of relating it to death, because how we alluded to earlier about the beauty and the pain. I think it could be exemplified in what we're going through, this whole, whatever's going on in the world today in the United States. In the same way, where it seems like a lot of pain and a lot of tough things going on, but at the same time, who knows, maybe we'll come out of this better and we can see the beauty somehow.
Yeah.
And I think if we have that perspective with everything, and I think it's easy just to push that away and say, oh, living in a fairy, like nothing's that happy and go lucky. But at the same time, I think it's like the lotus flower. It grows from the mud. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it's all pain right now, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe we'll be better off.
You know what? I was saying this for a while, and I'm going to start saying it again. I mean, people need to remember, it doesn't end well.
Life?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
But I mean that, like,
maybe.
No, it doesn't. I mean, what, you think you're going to be 90 years old watching The Price is Right, and then you'll go, and then that's it? No, you're going to get a call, and it's going to be about a mole. Or it's going to be like someone was driving and had a little too much fun in the bar mitzvah they were coming from, and you just happen to be the asshole. You know what I mean? It just, and I mean it doesn't end well sarcastically, and by that I mean it ends really well, because we go on and we leave this body behind, and we, you know, and we are eternal. Next. Yeah.
So the word eternal freaks me out. There's a great, if I mention this in the podcast, whatever, skip ahead. But the Jim Jeffries skit mentions being eternal. Oh, yeah. And the way he says, like, I don't care. It's like eternal. It's like forever. It's like, eventually I'll get bored in his Australian accent, but sure, eternal freaks me out. It's weird. I really start thinking about this stuff. I'm like,
I think Larry David did something on that too.
This sounds like a Larry David bit too, but it's just the idea of it being eternal freaks me out more than the idea of just dying. Like the fact that we just continue to do whatever the next phases are just forever. But I guess if it's truly have love, then it's, or I'm not going to know where I was. I don't know. But the idea of being eternal forever really makes me like cross-eyed.
Right. Well, I think we don't have, I just don't think we have the bandwidth to understand what even forever. I mean, we literally, there could be like, you could be in like 5 different realities happening at the same time.
We don't
know.
So
what's forever? Like forever, we don't eternal. Know. So I don't even stress about that part.
Yeah, it's not so much. It's just it's not like I constantly think about that. And I'm cross-eyed for the whole day, but it's moments I just think about. I'm looking at, I'm like, oh shit. Then I got to catch myself. So it's a balance of just, I think, everything in moderation. Like I don't want to ignore it, but I also want to like obsess about it, because if I do obsess about it, then it's a weird rabbit hole. Yeah. And I know that by myself by now. But at the end of the day, we just got to live.
I love that. I love that you that one of your intentions of doing this show is to celebrate other people's family members that have passed, because you feel that you've been over celebrated every year.
You know what I mean?
And you want to spread the love. That's very sweet. And you know, and you and I talked about this a little earlier, which was when we first talked about, I was in New York City during 9/11, and my ex was in the building. I thought he was dead for 5 hours, and everyone has, I mean, no one, that's a day everybody remembers what they were doing, where they were. And I immediately asked you if your dad worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, because I knew people that worked there, and I knew that those were the floors that were heavily affected. So, I have a special connection with you about that because I was there.
And I thank you for sharing that because it hit me hard when you first said like no shit because I was 12 years old. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I have no idea how bad I would want to be there. I don't know what I would do being there, but something about just being there is just something that I almost wish I dreamed for.
It was weird that they locked us. Well, it wasn't weird. It made sense, right? Nobody knew, but my sister was in New Jersey. I remember that it was a feeling of like caged, and we couldn't leave. But it was such mayhem, you know. It was.
You said you saw the tower? Actually,
I saw World Trade 1 and World Trade 2 go down because you could see them because I was right on Christopher and 6th Avenue.
Okay,
and you could just see them both right there.
Christopher and 6th is pretty close.
Yeah, that's like the West Village.
That's wild.
Yeah, and man, none of the phones were working, and the only call that got through was him at 1, and he said, "George, I'm okay. I'm alive."
He didn't say Jorge?
No, he didn't say Jorge.
No, I'm sorry.
Are you trying to be funny?
That's my job. You
can be funny too.
Okay, yeah. I won't use it. Don't worry. I won't put you blast on here.
But. So what I like to say in my stand-up too is like, that people are always asking me, do I want to be George or Jorge, right? Do you want to be George or Jorge? And I'm like, dude, like it doesn't matter. It's like it doesn't matter. It's like, what are you able to pronounce? Okay, that's my question. And I usually let anybody call me George or Jorge except for the Brits, because in my experience, the Brits are so freaking white. So they're always trying to be all Latino and spicy. And they're like, well, so what? And those are the ones that are not allowed to call me Jorge, because they'll go, so what is it that you want to be called? Is it Jorge? And I'm like, no, it's not Jorge.
It's funny. Whenever I see Jorge, I never even registers to call him Jorge George.
You don't, but other people do.
Okay.
Other people do. Yeah, and I think at the end, it's like I moved to Miami when I was 12, and I'm telling you, in Miami, it's not like here. All the Jorges become George. So I didn't really have an option. It was like people phonetically were like, oh, George. So I just kind of went with it. And, you know, you're trying to simulate. And, But then I got here and people were like, no, you're Jorge. You should own it. And
like in LA?
Yeah, in LA. And like you're, LA. And then I'm like, I guess. And then I just felt like I was being so Jorge.
It's true. Jorge is a very like sensual name. But I got familiarized.
But I use it once in a while when I know it's going to work. Like years ago, my dream was to always meet Anderson Cooper.
Okay.
And I would always tell my friends, oh, I'm going to marry him. Gloria Vanderbilt is going to be my mom-in-law. We're going to go buy houses in Bridgehampton, the whole thing. And I ran into him once, and I'll never forget that I said, Anderson, and he turned around, he's like, hey. And then I went, hey, nice to meet you. I'm like, my name is Jorge Perez. Because I knew he was into Latin guys. And his little beady eyes like opened up, like he goes, hi.
So you keep
once in a while, I keep it real.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm a Yankee fan growing up. So there's a well-known Yankee catcher. His name is Jorge Posada. So that's how I got familiarized with Jorge, never George. I'm not even a Jorge. I'm offended by George, to be honest, but that's okay. But I mean, I guess we leave it on the Jorge line, but I don't know if there's any last comments you want to mention. But at the end of the day, I'm happy we got the chance to talk, because you have some really cool insights.
This was fun. Yeah, this has been such a treat, and like I said, it's I was in Malibu all day today with a friend of mine, and who also, by the way, this is what I'm loving about this time of COVID in a way, because we're seeing everybody either going back home to changing their lifestyles, changing careers. You know what I mean? We're experiencing all these changes, and this friend of mine is literally going back to run the father's business, and his dad and him have never been really close, but now the dad is seeing how he's taking over the business, and the dad. And we had this beautiful day talking about dads, and then out of nowhere, the dad sent him like a joke, like a funny joke video. And he's like, oh my God, my dad's never sent me this in my whole life. And I'm like, you see, you're like, we're talking about this and things are opening up. And then so I've had a day filled with dad stories, and I think it's beautiful to kind of end it with this conversation.
I love it, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. George Perez. I don't know why.
Jorge for you. Jorge for you.
Jorge for me, George for you. Thank you again. Outliers TV. If you want to check out his podcast, I don't have to do the same and get through all your episodes. Thank you so
Awesome,
much. I look forward to other people hearing your story, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Jorge out, David out. Thank you so much, guys. Later.